Hi, I'm Romi.
And I'm Nicole. Welcome to the Her Pursuit Pod, where we share our journey of building our business, The Daily Drip, a dynamic media platform that provides content and community for more than 4,000 South Florida female CEOs, founders, business owners, executives, and professionals.
Whether it's through our newsletter, events, or this podcast, our hope is to inspire your next big move and arm you with the tools you need to crush it. So tune in on your drive to work, wind down with us after a long day as we share our journey and the journeys of other remarkable business leaders on Her Pursuit. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Her Pursuit. I'm Romi, co-founder of The Daily Drip, with my partner in crime, Nicole Mastrangelo, and we're here with Elizabeth, our creative director, and we are kicking off season 2. What a fucking journey.
One year of
podcasting.
It's been a whole year. Does it feel like it's been a year yet? Like in your mind, can you process that?
No.
It doesn't feel like a year. And it's crazy to think how far we've come from like that first episode. Like there were a lot of hives in the beginning.
I feel like there's less.
I have hives right now.
I'm saying there's less. There's less hives. My chest is less red. We're getting there.
Yeah, we also have a new cover.
It's a refresh. I'm glad we went with that image. That image of the shoes, me in my heels, you in your sneakers. That picture went so viral on our 3rd anniversary and our magazine launch.
And it was kind of a one-off photo. Like you guys were like, oh my God, how funny. Let's take a photo of our shoes. Like it wasn't even like curated.
It was like, it was like oh, by the way, and it ended up going viral. Like who knew that picture was going to be such a hit? But it feels good for season 2 to have that image reflective of, what this podcast is about. I think it does a good job.
I think it reflects the modern businesswoman, and it also in a way reflects you guys and your personalities. Yeah. So I really love it. And I think when the beginning of the podcast, we were back and forth about different covers and stuff. And I remember that you were like, I kind of wanted to be faceless. And originally we had, I was going to talk about this, but originally we had a drawing of like these faceless, like Pinteresty like girls in like a table, and it was like kind of like a drawing, and just Nicole's like, yeah, like this cool faceless thing. And then I showed her some podcast covers. She was like, no, okay, we need that. Like this looks weird. She goes, no, we made it on Canva, and she was like, no, this looks weird, let's use a photo. So then we actually then ended up using what's now the cover. But I just think it's funny we've now turned back to the faceless concept, which is like really what the Daily Drip is all about. You guys from the get-go always told me you didn't want to be the faces of the company because the thought leaders are the faces of this. Everybody who's involved. So
the idea is that anyone should be able to see themselves in one of us or in the content. I think sometimes when a personality is so strong, then like it could be hard to relate to. But when the face and the voice is multifaceted, anybody can relate to it.
Yeah, and I think this new image definitely, there's people who are going to relate to either one of the pair of shoes. Either one. You're either a Romi or a Nicole.
Not only that, maybe it's both the same person. Like one day you're in sneakers, the next day you're in heels, and that's just what this life looks like.
Very true. Also, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, we're on YouTube now, and we have a new setup. So we're kind of like doing the moody, vibey setup. We've got a new cover. We also got a new intro. So yeah, a lot of new stuff going on. So I wanted to start off the episode actually, just to kind of give you guys a sense of like what an accomplishment this is, really. So we're going to talk about a few podcast analytics, okay? So only 20% of podcasts produced yearly make it the full year. So you guys are already a part of the 20%. Also, 90% of podcasters don't make it past episode 3. And 95% of podcasters don't make it past episode 20. So we are way past that. We're definitely in the top 1% of people who actually even attempt to do this. So that's a really big accomplishment within itself.
Top 1%. That's where I like to live. The air is crisp up there.
Okay, so my first question for you guys, and you guys can kind of jump around on how you want to answer it. But what has kept you motivated since starting this? Because we haven't missed a single episode. We are a, every other week podcast, and we've been really consistent about it. So what do you think are the things that have helped you stay motivated and keep it up?
I don't mind kicking it off. I have to say, we come into these podcasts and we have like some idea of what we're going to talk about, but I have takeaways with each conversation. Like I think like every time we sit down and we have these, the thought leaders join us and we have these really deep, meaningful conversations about real stuff. Like I get excited for the next one. Like we almost come up with like, oh my God, this conversation was so good. We have to come back and do it. And I think that combined with people coming up and saying, I've listened to your podcast over and over again, same episodes, because that's how much it meant to me. That's how much it resonated. I mean, if that doesn't keep you going, I don't know I don't know what does.
Yeah, the audience reaction has been so exciting, especially because we launched this on an existing community that was already so engaged in what you guys were doing. So bringing the podcast into the mix, I think, was obviously a great move, but also the reason why people are so invested as well is that they love to sit down on their drive to work and listen in, you know?
And I love the opportunity where our audience gets to hear in real time from our thought leaders. Like, these are the people creating the content. These are real women doing the work. And I think that for anyone to be able to have the opportunity to hear from them what they're dealing with and the connection they're making to their stories, I love that we're able to do that, to give them a space to shine.
Yeah. What about you, Nicole?
I think, you know, what's kept me motivated has definitely been how much our community has enjoyed co-creating these episodes with us. I think, you know, to Romi's point, we'll finish an episode and the cameras aren't even off and we're like, oh my God, that would be such a good episode topic. And like right away, we're like, Elizabeth, write that down, pencil that in, put that in the schedule. And you know, everyone's getting so excited because it feels like we all kind of own this podcast a little bit because everybody's coming up with the episode topics. Everybody's being raw and real in the conversation. Like none of this is scripted. We just come up with a topic we want to talk about. And that's about as much planning as goes into this.
Yeah, I think the first few episodes, we kind of sat down and we're like, okay, what do we think would be interesting? But then after a while, we would just like listen in on everybody else's conversations and what the thought leaders were saying. And that's when we were like, okay, this is what they want to talk about, or this is what they might want to dive into more. And I think now into season 2, that's going to be an even bigger part of our process is making them involved in all of these topics in a more systematic way
Yeah,
than
and
we were
I think
before.
to your point, yeah, the system is what keeps me consistent, right? So I think their reactions keeps me motivated, but the system keeps me consistent. I think we have put together a very realistic cadence that we all know we can commit to. Yeah. We're all committed to it, and that's what allows us to show up all the time. But it has me really excited just seeing how much better we've gotten over the course of a year, because I said this in another episode and I told you, Elizabeth, when we started this, it was because I knew in 3 years I wanted to be great. And so a year into this, it's like I'm excited to see we're progressing in that direction. Like I have no doubt Her Pursuit is going to be on fire, you know, in a couple years. Like we're going to just keep getting better and better and co-creating, you know, more interesting ideas and concepts, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's great how we've taken not just like audience input, but our community's input and like built that sense of ownership. I think that's definitely one of the things that makes this show so unique compared to other interview style podcast shows where normally you're bringing in like a celebrity or someone well known or who has clout in some way, but really we're taking regular, local, everyday. Some have audiences, some don't so much. Some are in the beginning of their journey, some are already like, you know, doing their thing. So I think it's interesting how we're putting this together in such a different way, but it's still resonating so much.
It's on brand and on mission. Everything about the Daily Drip is about amplifying ordinary voices, right? Like all the articles, everything that you read, watch, or listen to is just ordinary people talking. And so this is kind of like the next evolution of the same thing.
Yeah. So you're saying I'm glad we're getting better and better because I want to take us back to our OG days, okay? To the cringe days.
They're still among us, okay? The
cringe is still lingering. There's a lingering cringe.
It's definitely there, just maybe diluted slightly.
A little bit now that you have raging fans coming to you.
Raging fans, oh my God.
She doesn't feel as cringe, maybe.
Just died of cringe on the inside.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to take us back to our OG days. I don't know if you guys remember this video, but when we were recording our first ever intro, I had a camera rolling while you guys were trying to like practice and figure out what you were going to say. And I quote, Nicole says, "I don't know what to do with my hands. I hate this."
I put them here. I put them here. I don't know. One of these days I'm going to sit on them. I'm afraid I'm going to poke someone's eye out with these things.
That was my question. Is like, do you now feel comfortable what to do with your hands?
No, I still don't know what to do with my hands. The difference is I just don't care anymore. I don't care.
That's the point though, is not to care, not to fixate on these little things, because really they're not what matters, right?
Well, and once you get into the good conversation, you start to, and you're not as focused. I think it's like when the camera starts, you're so hyper aware of it. But once like everyone starts talking, it gets a little less.
What advice would you give to someone who maybe wants to start a podcast or get in front of a camera in any way, but they're nervous in the same way you guys were? What's like the number one thing maybe you can tell them to get them more comfortable?
I will say the thing that worked for me is I just had it in my head that I wanted to be good in 3 years. I tell myself that every time it's a studio day, that this is like one step closer to being really good at this. And so I think, my best piece of advice is just accept the fact it's going to suck in the beginning. That's okay. Like everything sucks in the beginning, but you've got to hold on to that vision of what it will be once you're getting better and better and better. And like today that vision's clearer than it was a year ago. And I'm sure next year it'll be even more clear, and that will keep you going.
Yeah, it's the fear of not being good in 3 years that makes you be okay with the fear of maybe not being good right now.
Totally.
And I think it's in line with what we literally just talked about this last week on our Candid Conversations. Like, just do it. Like, going ahead and just go ahead and do it. It's okay for it to not be perfect. It's okay for it to be bad, but you're not going to get good at something you're not doing. You're not going to get better at it if you don't just start.
What did Sierra say? Sierra said, do it scared.
Do it scared. And I think that like we live by that. I think almost all of our journey has been scary in some degree, right? Like you do an event, it's scary. Are people going to come? What are they going to think? How is it going to hit? Like every big project, every new direction, whatever it is always scary. But I think we've always been really confident about what the message is, like what we're saying. The video part, the podcast part is sort of like a technicality.
It's a work in progress,
guys. Yes. But I also think that that's what's made people really resonate with it is it's just showing up as you are. Again, Ciara quote. We literally have a book of quotes just from thought leaders. It's a running book of quotes, but show up as you are. And I actually, listen, we just talked about this, but in the most recent episode of a Cody Sanchez podcast, what was really cool is here's someone that has a multi-million-dollar business, a podcast that is wildly successful. And she started the episode by saying, I'm going to apologize right now. The audio on this episode was terrible. We screwed up. And I thought, if somebody at that level can open up a conversation and be like, listen, it just sucked. Yeah. We were off and we're going to fix it and we're going to do better. I thought if that doesn't just like, I feel like that's representative of us. Like I connected in that moment. Like
embrace the imperfection.
Yeah. Even if you're at the top of your game, there's still going to be things that you try that are just not going to land perfect every time, but you're doing it.
Yeah. There's what is it that I think it's the Him and Her podcast. They always say this, the couple on that show, that you should start and adjust instead of waiting for it to be perfect. It's better to just start and then fix it as you're going.
That is literally.
And I think we have lived by that.
It's not even just how the Daily Drip has grown. It's
started.
It's how I do everything in life. I just start and then adjust and figure it out along the way.
Okay, well, my next question for you is, will you ever stop fighting over who's going to introduce the guests?
Nope.
Okay, let me clarify that.
Nope.
We don't fight over who gets to introduce. We fight over who doesn't have to introduce. Okay, so let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Please don't think that we're fighting over the spotlight. Romi and I are throwing each other the fire, like we're volleying.
It is. You guys fight like an old married couple. Like you do it, you do it, you do it, you do it.
I did the last one.
And it's no, it's never gonna not be like that. I don't imagine.
I don't think.
We did it right before this. Literally, you ask if it's going to ever change. We're a year in. We're still doing it.
And people don't know this because they don't see it, but this is my day-to-day. No, I'm kidding. What have been your favorite topics to discuss after this whole year? I'm not going to ask you for a favorite episode, but what has been your favorite general topic to dive into? And you each can answer it.
I think for me, my favorite topics have been all about going from 0 to 1. And that was kind of like how we started this podcast and why we wanted a better way to let people in on the building of the Daily Drip. We've been complimented often for building in public and giving people a frame of reference and encouraging them through telling our story of how we're building this business, this community, this brand. And so anytime we've ever had a conversation around building, starting, going from 0 to 1, like the baby steps, those have been always my favorite conversations because we have so many different women that are at different stages in different industries. And people think you're going from 0 to 1 because you're starting a business. But we've had well-established business owners talking about starting a new service, a new product, a new office, a new, a total pivot. They're leaving their industry and they're going into something completely different. And I think there's something like that really is compelling to me about people that I think, like they have the balls to start something new. Like I always want to have that conversation. And so those have always been my favorite.
I love that. I'm not even going down that because I think like very much the same. And I think just overall, I love the candor that every conversation takes.
Yes.
I love the fact that no one is showing up and posturing or pretending. Like everyone's being very real about whether it's their journey through parenting and how that is and what it's like to navigate mental health, business. Like for me, it's more of that because I think each conversation has been really meaningful, really impactful, gets me like kind of really excited because it's just like everyone's putting their cards on the table. And I think that's my favorite part.
Yeah, because there's already the dynamic of like feeling comfortable around one another because everybody you're bringing around is like, they're members and they're friends and they know each other. Everybody, like, rarely are we coming into the studio and like introducing people. Like normally people kind of know each other or they're within the same circles. So there's already that sense of like comfortability. So then when you sit down at the table, it's like all bets are off.
Yeah, you never know what's going to come out.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Okay, fill in the blank in this sentence, okay? You know it's going to be a fun episode when blank is on the show.
I don't want to pick favorites. Ciara comes to mind. Tiffany, I mean, you don't know what's coming.
You stole mine. I was going to say Tiffany. I'll tell you why. You know it's going to be a good episode when Tiffany's on because prior to the cameras turning on, she is a nervous wreck and she is worried about her hair and her makeup and does she have lips and can I borrow your lipstick? Is the camera too close? And is it this and that? But then we'll clap and record, like the recording session starts. And she is just so brilliant in how she articulates things that it's always kind of like a really good, like mind blown episode when she's on.
And I also think it's like surprising almost because you're like, oh, is she gonna be nervous if she not? But then all of a sudden she like turns it on. So yeah, she has it's exciting because of that shift. I feel like, Yeah, what about you? Why Ciara?
Because I think always what connected me with Ciara is like, I love how direct and like blunt she is and matter of fact about things, but also is in that way always sharing something like super mind blowing. Like she will drop something, you're like, oh my God, like that, wowza, So I love that. Her just complete raw and funny.
And, there's something interesting I'll add to. I tend to enjoy the podcast when we have podcasters on. I think that's part of what makes Ciara so great because Ciara has a podcast, The Bunker. And then like Susan Winograd, podcaster.
Nicole Cumberbatch.
Podcaster. Kelly Tolliday, podcaster. So when we get our thought leaders that are podcasters, somehow it puts like wind in my sails,
Because they already know how to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, and they're just so good at it. They're just so good at having conversations like this and digging deep.
Takes the pressure off.
I feel relieved when I'm like, especially if like there was an episode where you weren't there, but I'm like, oh my God, thank God. And like Nicole Cumberbatch showed up. I'm like so relieved because I'm like, at least there's somebody there who's like super competent in this space and is going to know how to just navigate all of this.
Yet in contrast, to see someone like Tiffany or even like Lisa Rigoli, coming on and it's like not something that's a regular part of their routine and see the nerves that they have just the way I do, and then we all come on and it's like, hey, we don't do this, but we're doing it. Like, here we go. And then to see them thrive in the conversation, like have such great moments, like, I don't know, it's really hard to pick, but I think there is definitely a difference between, I can feel it, the difference between doing the podcast with podcasters versus people who don't typically podcast. I think they give different feelings.
Yeah, and sometimes the people who don't typically podcast actually surprise you.
Oh, they always do.
Oh my God, when Casita
Oh my God, Casita was great.
Was amazing. And then when the lights went down and the clap went, she was like, "That was awesome," and we were all like.
It was like she got off a roller coaster. She was like, "That was great. Let's do it again."
And I think that's the point too. I think that's what's really awesome about this experience is every single guest, every thought leader that's been on has had a very unique moment. Like there's a moment that is so unique to them that is just the ones that go viral, like the ones that, and I love being a place where they're given that opportunity to be able to have that.
So let's talk about virality then. Okay, we just had a video hit 1 million views. It was with Nicole Cumberbatch. So I guess my question for you guys, are you surprised with the moments that go viral? Do they ever take you by surprise?
No, I'm never surprised by the moments that go viral. To me, the moments that go viral, that's just those views, those clicks, those shares are basically like the digital yes, girl, yes. Like, right? Like, yes, I hear you. I see you. I'm never shocked at those because it's sometimes like our audience just needs to hear and saying the thing that they're thinking. Right. And so, sometimes certain moments they go more viral than others, but I'm never surprised at what hits.
100%.
I wanted to talk about how it's kind of interesting. We post on multiple platforms, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, etc. But the reaction on TikTok is very different than the reaction on Instagram, and it's very different than the reaction on LinkedIn, right? In your guys' opinion, in growing the podcast and growing the community, why is it important to be on these different platforms? And what is the value in growing the community in all these different places?
I think there is virtually no scenario where dependence is good. And I think if you depend on one social media platform or one vehicle to get your message out, you're not only stunting your growth, but you're grossly jeopardizing your brand. I think it's important to if from a growth perspective, from an insurance perspective, just to make sure that you constantly have a method to reach people. But also, each of those platforms has a different kind of audience and an audience that's on the platform for a different reason. So it really challenges you to cultivate your message in different ways. And I think, a winning message is one that can speak to a variety of people and really impact them and be compelling for them. And by being on multiple platforms, you're really challenging yourself in honing that sort of message, that like timeless message, that powerful message that just hits and resonates with anyone. And I think that's a good challenge to have.
Yeah, I think it's obviously, it's a lot of platforms. It can be difficult if you don't have a team to do all of them. I always say to businesses, especially if they're a small business, start with three strategic. You want a virality platform, you want a community platform, and you want a search engine like YouTube, Pinterest. Even TikTok at this point is kind of like a search engine. You want to focus in on those three and then expand. But once you start expanding, like that's really when you can start seeing significant differences. Like right now, we're seeing that our TikTok is going to surpass our Instagram in like the next month probably. And our Instagram has always been like the core of like a lot of our content, and so has LinkedIn. Yeah. And it's interesting just how quickly like a platform we can see growth like that.
And then you can interpret those metrics and kind of learn from the reactions that you're getting. And get better. Yeah. That's the thing. I think, anytime you're doing anything in a vacuum, in even like within our teams or things, when we're so insulated, like it's really hard to create an insulation. You really need a diverse perspective. You need a lot of inspiration and a lot of different people seeing and interacting with your content in order for it to get better.
Yeah, because then we can analyze that and look at it and be like, these kinds of conversations are resonating more. We need to dive more into this. So I think it's also like how we're structuring our episodes, even on the back end. It's like looking at that and being like, what is getting to people? I mean, we've only been doing this for a year, but now that we have a whole year worth of episodes out and a whole year worth of clips out, we can really look at that and be like, okay, this is what hits people during this time of year, and this is what hits people in this sort of demographic. And so it's definitely valuable information as you go on, but you kind of only learn these things by doing too. So,
and I would only add that I think, there's been a major shift in how these platforms really cross-pollinate and overlap. Like for a period of time, you could argue that LinkedIn was straight up business. And if you wanted to talk to business owners, that's where you would take that. Now, there are attorneys that are hanging out on TikTok, and that is how they're growing their business. And our audience is the modern business professional. And that is across the gamut of professions. So if we're not showing up in all of those places, we're really missing the mark on where a lot of the people that we're trying to connect with are hanging out. And for each of them, some of them are on all platforms, but for some of them, they might just be on one or two. And I think like there's kind of like the delineation between what these platforms were is no longer like clearly marked. You know, like there's value in showing up. I mean, you talked about that, but I do think that we'd be missing a huge part of our audience by not showing up in all three platforms.
Okay, speaking of audience, I did an audience Q&A yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw on your Instagram stories, but we posted a Q&A. I like did it in secret. I'm like, maybe they won't see it. No, but we put an audience Q&A for your audience basically to ask you any question. It was super open-ended just to see like what was even tickling their mind at that moment, right? So I pulled 3 questions that I liked, and so we're just gonna quickly do a little Q&A sesh, okay? We've never done this, and I feel like we should do more of this. I think this is fun. Every time I'm like, are you ready? Yeah, you are. Yeah. There's no. Or I'll be like, ready? Go. That's my other one. Okay. How did you two meet? I want to start a business, but I don't want to do it alone. What makes a great business partner?
Oh, wow.
Do you want to tell the story of like how I stalked you? And it's like, we have to be best friends.
I don't think you guys have ever said this story on the podcast.
So go ahead, tell them.
So we actually met at a women's co-working space, and Nicole had just given this amazing presentation. I know that's shocking to everybody. That obviously impressed the crap out of me. And I literally walked up to her. I'm like, that was amazing. Can we have lunch? Like, I literally was like, can we be best friends? And it kind of, like for real though. And I have to tell you that in that time especially, and we were both, you know, she was starting her consulting firm. I was new in financial services. I was going to pretty much anything that said networking and women. And it was a tough scene out there. It was very hard to find quality women that really wanted to connect in a meaningful way. And we had one lunch, and it was like, I have a heart tattoo. You have a heart tattoo. I'm from Toronto. You're from Toronto.
Was the scene from Step Brothers? Did we just become best friends?
But it was, and it evolved also. I mean, I can remember conversations that got us really close really fast. Like I remember like hour-long calls about like, and thinking, oh my God, I can't believe how deep we're going. And like we met a week ago. You know, dropping bombs like we all cry in our cars. That was one of the things I remember us discussing. But it also came from like we were looking at each other and what we were trying to grow and build independently. And it was like, okay, well, like how do we support each other? Like we actually took an opportunity where Nicole showed me what she was doing. And I would go out and I'd meet with a prospect and I'd be like, she'd be like, how'd it go? I'm like, oh no, they're not for me, but they'll be calling you any minute. I'm like, you don't even have to do anything. They're yours. Like, it kind of started like that, you know, and
yeah, it really did. It was
like
very organic. I think that's an important thing. It was organic. It was not, I wasn't out saying, got to go find a business partner. And I don't think she was either. It was just kind of one of those things that we met and we realized we shared a lot of the same values and the same goals. I think in a partnership, whether it's marriage or business or whatever, that is essential. You have to share the same goals and the same values. You have to care about the same things. You have to be motivated by similar things, and stand for a lot of the same things. And I think that became apparent with Romi and I. So it was very organic and very natural for us to work together and partner together. I think the other thing that is kind of like dangerous about the two of us is how different yet complementary we are and how exceptional we are in our requisite zone of genius. Like Romi is a super connector. And I'd consider myself friendly, but like Romi makes me look like a hermit. Like she makes me look like I'm antisocial. Like Romi's ability to make people feel comfortable immediately, make people feel seen and heard and understood, and then her giver mentality of wanting to just help people through her gift of connection and being able to make those introductions. My mind is much more strategic. I'm a builder, right? So Romi always has made the joke that we're a field of dreams. Like she builds it and I bring them.
No,
And
you build it, I bring them.
oh, right. I said that backwards. Right. Yeah. I build it. She brings them.
But it's also the giving, and it's also your ability, like the way you make someone see their own business. Like I love to be there to watch their face because it's nothing short of amazing. Like Nicole will and it just happens. Like she literally can't contain herself. They say one word, one problem, they open the door a crack. Nicole busts it up. She's like, okay, here's what's going to happen. This is what's going on. This is how and they're just sitting there like, oh my God, like how it is mind blowing to watch it happen in real time. And I would say that also was the tie that binds was the two of us care so much in terms of the giving aspect. Like we spend a lot of time behind the scenes talking about other people's businesses and how we can help them because we care so much to see them win. Like that alignment. And I would take it one step further. Like we make decisions and we take action.
oh,
Neither of us sit on anything. And I think that's the key. And the level of trust that we have in one another, like it's literally like, okay, this, okay, break. And nobody's wondering if the other person is showing up and doing what they're doing. We both know we are literally killing ourselves with what we respectively went out to do.
And it's funny. We know fundamentally that each one is doing their part to the best of their capability, because we're both kind of like motivated by not wanting to let anyone down, and
Especially each other.
not each other. Exactly. Like we don't want to let the other person down, but more importantly, like we feel such a shared responsibility to support the community we've built that, I think that's probably bigger than even us worrying about letting each other down. And I think Romi's right. Like, having a good partner is having someone who can mobilize and activate to your speed. Right. And so that's a big part of building something and growing, is being able to make decisions in a timely manner and then act on them and implement them. And I think I have not met someone that has matched my go to the level that Romi has.
I also don't think anyone has as much fun as us.
There's
There's just
that.
no chance. No shot.
Would you guys, generally speaking, recommend people go into business with a friend? And how do you manage friendship and business? Are boundaries important? Are they not? Is it just about having the right person?
You're talking to someone who comes from a family. So never mind being in business with your friend. Talk about being in business with your parents, with your husband,
Which we both experienced.
yeah. And so
Same. So to me, this is like totally normal. But the general advice in business school, they're like, don't go into business with your partner, with your family, or with a friend.
I think yes, but, or yes, and, it's not that black and white, because if that person is the right complement to the goal and happens to be a family member or a friend, you just have to make sure to go in it and from the perspective of having an agreement about what the goal is and what each person's role is in it. Whether that person's a friend, a family member, whoever, if the goals are aligned and the values are aligned. And that's why I said earlier, it's about shared values and shared goals is the most important thing. When you have that, it doesn't matter who that other person is.
And I would say also, like, I think you have to have the kind of relationship that I think we have, where we can have the hard conversations, where we can be like, listen, like, we have to talk about this, whatever it is. And we've had those conversations, and they're able to have the effect that they do and be productive.
Yes.
Again, because of how much we love, care, and respect one another, to say, like, if you're coming to me to point something out or to talk about something that's difficult, it's coming from the place of, like, for us, right? Like, and I think if you're in a situation where you can't have hard conversations, your business will not last. Your relationships don't last. They can't exist like that.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, so we're going to move on to the next question. When you first started your business, how did you scale your business to get to members? I think that what they're referring to is your membership program specifically, so we can talk about that.
I think what has always been my philosophy, and it worked for us, and I've seen it work for a lot of clients and people, is you have to spend a considerable amount of time first building audience, first building brand, right? You have to stand for something, because one minute you don't exist, the next minute you do. And just because you exist and you have a logo and a website doesn't mean it means anything to anyone, or that they trust it, or that they want to give dollars to it. So we spent the first year just building the brand, making it mean something, building trust, and building the audience. Then we went and opened up a membership and sold membership. And it was a hell of a lot easier to do it that way than to come out of the gate as something brand new that no one's heard of. No one, there's no, reputation. There's no nothing. And then try to sell something. So for us, that seemed to work. For a lot of people that I've worked with, that seems to be the best bet. And so I would say pace yourself.
The proof of concept was a big, like really like, how do you just go out and sell something that you don't even, and I think part of it came from also, really taking in a lot that was going around and things for me personally that I saw not really go well, and paying attention to why I felt like that was, like when the focus shifted to trying to expand rather than focus on the people that were already paying attention or that were already starting to invest or be a part of it.
And I think too, I'll just add to that, because what Romi brought up a good point, but I think if you're trying to build a membership, which it sounds like this person is, it's important for you to understand the business model you're getting into. And a membership model grows through its members. So it often does not grow through advertising or through traditional sales or biz dev tactics. Like there might be brand partnerships or member to member membership organization to membership organization collaboration. But really, your primary growth is going to come from word of mouth from the people that are already in your membership. So if you're launching something that requires word of mouth, you have to generate the word of mouth somewhere. And so that's why I say, start with building the audience, building the trust. And then when you do launch that membership, you'll have these loyal OG fans that are going to jump first, and then they're going to help you grow and spread the word.
100%. Totally agree with everything you guys just said. What's the best piece of advice you can give a new entrepreneur? Squeaky clean, brand new. Just give your one quick, easy tip that you wish you knew maybe when you guys got started.
All right, I got a good one.
Okay.
You ready for
Obviously.
it?
I should go first then, because I feel like once you obliterate, then you just obliterate.
Go ahead. Go
No,
first.
I'm teasing.
No, my good piece of advice is, because I was just talking about this with someone about branding and content marketing. And I said, before we can even talk about content, you have to have a really good product. And what I mean by a really good product is you have to be solving a urgent, relevant problem, and you have to do it really well. Entrepreneurship is a great lifestyle, and it's certainly never boring. But I feel like we are having a lot of people on the trend right now is entrepreneurship, right? There's a lot of people leaving corporate and starting their own businesses. And a lot of the motivation is work-life balance or freedom or control over time or money. You need to have the motivation to solve a problem. That is the most important thing, because if you have a lackluster problem, solution to a problem, like we've seen it time and time again. People are either creating products that don't really solve a problem that's urgent, or a relevant problem, like we solved that problem 10 years ago, we don't need this anymore, or they're delivering it horribly, right? And so there's no amount of marketing, advertising, content planning, or strategy that's going to help sell and grow a terrible product. But if your whole goal and motivation for having a business is about you and your freedom from time, money, control over things, you're really not going to be able to invest, or you're not going to be focused on the right thing, which should be creating a killer product, because everything hinges on that. So that would be my best advice. Be obsessed over what you're solving and how you're solving it.
So I would say that you need a level of faith and conviction that is so unshakable in what you are doing. because what it takes to see something through from once you have that kick-ass product, despite what everyone thinks because of all the social media and all the sparkles, this has taken us almost we're in year 4. And if you're not prepared to make certain sacrifices and be uncomfortable in a variety of ways, whatever that is.
For a long time.
It's not, oh, I can be uncomfortable, get comfortable being uncomfortable for a month or 2. We're talking, it's a long game. And so I'm not trying to freak anyone out about it, but like, if you are not so confident and so sure, like what keeps us going and on track is we know that what we're doing matters. We know there's never a doubt about that. All the things that may make you cry, it's not like we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And that is a level of conviction that a lot of people don't have. And you will not last. You are not in control. Like, you're choosing your time and all of these things. It's a matter of how you're allocating it. You will not have more time. You will have significantly less time working for yourself because all you're doing is thinking about this business the way you think about your kids.
You're never turned off.
You do not turn off. We are messaging at 3 a.m. taking note. Like, this is the real thing. So I just say, like, you're going to have ups and downs. There's going to be a lot of doubt. There's a lot of questions. But if you're going to make it, you have to literally have a gut of steel to see it through.
And a good support system, a good community.
100%.
It makes all the difference because it is a lifetime. It is a journey of discomfort. It's not just in the beginning. It's
and it
through
affects
every
your
growth
circle.
stage.
It affects your family.
That would have been my answer. Like, that's my answer to the question. It's like, you need to surround yourself by people who think like you or think like beyond, so that way you can grow with them. They say you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Exactly. So think about who you're spending the most time with, because that's who you're going to evolve into.
The people that are supporting you also have to be like, we couldn't do this if our families weren't supporting us the way they do, because it literally affects everyone. Like, absolutely. It takes a lot of you physically and emotionally and your time. Mm-hmm. So to have that understanding and have a strong relationship with those players, because what you're doing affects everybody. It's not just you.
All right. Well, we're going to move into some takeaways from this past year. Some more introspective questions. What's something you wish you could tell your 2023 self when you first got started with podcasting? What would you tell her? Or would you not tell her anything at all?
You're thinking way too small. I had no idea the canon that podcasting would be and how it is literally changing every strategy, projection, everything. Like, whatever I thought it was going to be for us, it's 10 times more. So I would say you're thinking too small.
Mine's not that profound. I'm just going to say that you're going to like it more than you expected. Like, I've been pleasantly surprised. Yeah. That I actually look forward to it. I mean, not the intro part that still makes me all whatever. And there's still...
I don't know what it is about the intro that freaks you guys out.
It's the names that there's so much. Okay, there's just a lot. And we have a lot of very sophisticated people, and all I do is worry that I'm going to miss anyway. But I have to say that it has been so much more enjoyable and fulfilling than I expected. For all the nerves that I had going into it, it's actually been, I think, one of the best things we've done, as you know, and that's saying a lot, because I feel very proud of a lot of the things that we do. So thanks for kicking our asses.
Yeah. Well, we couldn't have done it without you, Elizabeth. You've been a big part of what made this possible. There was the systems, there was the processes that helped us stay consistent. But I think, having you oversee those and making sure we're staying on track and giving us ideas and sharing all your feedback, it helped us tremendously. So I think everybody needs an Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That's
and
important.
Even just guiding us, like just the way, like when I remember an episode where like you were late and I thought you weren't coming. The panic was so real. Like, I don't think there was enough medication in the Broward County. And I was like, oh my God, is she not coming? And like you walked in the room and I was like, Oh my God, thank God. And literally you didn't have to do anything. I needed you in the room.
She's our podcasting security blanket.
Yes. You just got to wrap yourself in Elizabeth and then everything's going to be okay.
No, but I think also another level to this is that you guys weren't super familiar with podcasts prior to this. Like, you didn't regularly listen to podcasts. You weren't I remember sending you guys podcast covers and Nicole was like, but like, where does this go? Like, do people, I'm like, think of it like your album cover. Like, this is what people are going to see on the Spotify.
People look at a podcast? I thought you only listened to it. I was
like, having to articulate this was like.
to see me. You mean I can't come in my pajamas? You're like, no,
Wait, they're
going to
be looking at us? I thought it was just sound.
And I've still never watched a podcast, by the way. Like, I still only listen.
You will start watching.
It's like watching the radio. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me.
But I think that was a big challenge for you guys, the fact that like this was so foreign to you that like you kind of needed like I'm such a podcaster, love podcasting, so it only came naturally to me that I would like guide you guys through this. But yeah, I think that's why it was so important for you guys. Like, now I feel like I don't have to come. You guys would be fine. But like
you literally just sit in the corner. I don't care. Just be in the room.
All right, so this is a question I want you to think really deeply about, okay? Not to get too serious, but this question may come up in the future. But what is something you would like to ask your future self in 2025?
Oh God, you could have prepped us for
that,
this. Wait,
that is like
2025. So like next year,
Next year when we do our second anniversary, what question do you want to ask yourself? What do you want to know?
Who's our presenting sponsor? I'm dying to know. Who's going to be presenting Her Pursuit?
Oh my God. The marketing cap.
Yeah. This is how my brain works, guys. No, but I would want to know, like, who's our presenting sponsor? Are we having special guests? Who are they? Like,
are we taking it live?
Are we taking it live?
Okay.
Oh, I'm just running with it. Listen, you said think big. I'm going for it. Like, how cool would a live podcast for us be? Not regular. I'm saying I could see us on a
God,
stage.
the hives would be terrible. Like
The fight over who will introduce on a live show.
We'll just make you do it.
Yeah,
as you
I think
said.
maybe you should
I
just
think
be
that
there
you'll
for
just
that
kick
one.
that off. But I okay, that's mine. I'm out.
Well, we're closing up, but I just want to ask you guys, how has podcasting changed the dynamic of the Daily Drip for the thought leaders? How has it changed the entire, I know we've talked about how it's kind of changed the business, but how do you think it's changed the dynamic within the thought leaders?
It's funny because we originally wanted to do podcasting as a way to do programming better, right? We were doing a lot of events. It was exhausting. Also, it kind of, now everyone's doing events. So it was getting harder to make each one compelling. And so podcasting was a way for us to keep the conversations alive, continue to give these speaking opportunities to our thought leaders and helping them amplify their voice. What I think it did, though, is show a lot of them the power of podcasting and giving them a new tool in their business tool belt, which that I really didn't see coming. Like, we have major organization CEO, one of our thought leaders, thinking about adding a podcast to their organization. Business owners that are like, maybe I should be podcasting, but maybe, I'm going to start guesting. We've had all kinds of like new conversations around how should podcasting work for me? Like, what should I be doing? And I think what started as just giving visibility and giving it better turned into like helping other people learn a whole business strategy through doing and exposure. And I don't think I saw that coming.
I think also like just seeing the connections and the way, we've had really interesting guests that are kind of not necessarily what you would imagine in the same space having a shared conversation. And so watching that dynamic and watching them interact with people in a very different way, live, unscripted, I think has been really cool to watch too.
Totally. Last question. What can listeners expect for season 2? I know we're changing up the location. We changed up the look a little, but also we're going to be doing solo interviews. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I think season 2, we're going to add more dynamics to the conversations and the podcast episode lineup. So right now, for season 1, it looked a lot of candid conversations with our thought leaders. And we're going to keep those because they have really performed well. The thought leaders have enjoyed them.
It's a classic round circle combo.
Yeah, it's super important, but we are surprisingly adding more studio time so that we can interview different people in the community, highlight other stories and beyond the thought leaders, and really kind of leverage our podcast and our platform to just show more of what's happening in our backyard and who's making it happen.
It's going to add in, we're going to grab some more audience-driven topics, not just from our thought leaders, but also from our audience. So we're going to be doing that more. So make sure you're following us on social so that they can, chime in. Yeah, I'm like, what's the word? Yeah. Also, we're going to be now, you can watch us on YouTube. So by now, a lot of our episodes are going to be populated on YouTube. So go ahead and watch them there. If you prefer more of like a sit down interview, like watch at night with your glass of wine and just chill, or you can just listen on your ride to work. Either one works. But yeah. Anything else?
I'm so glad that's how you ended this because I think that is so fitting.
I mean,
we don't know what we're doing, guys.
Yeah, we've got some improvements. I guess you'll see them as they come along.
We fight about who closes out the show.
No, I'll close it out. I'll close it out by thanking everybody. Thank you to everybody who has downloaded, who has tuned in, who has listened, who has shared it, who has come up to us out and about in the community and let us know what episode you liked or the comment that resonated. It has kept the fuel on our fire and kept us going and really been encouraging. And I think everything we do is really propelled by you. And so keep it coming. Keep the encouragement coming. Keep the feedback coming. Tell us what you want to hear, what you want to read. We're going to make it happen.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Her Pursuit.
You can listen to new episodes every other Wednesday on Spotify or watch us on YouTube. Stay in the loop on all our virtual and in-person events, read our latest articles, and catch new episodes by subscribing to our free weekly newsletter.
Check out the episode notes for more details, and we'll see you here on our next episode of Her Pursuit.